I finished my entire TBR for April, and I'm very proud of myself for that because, you know, I didn't even film a single thing, but I still read, you know? I'm not just reading for BookTube, I'm reading for pleasure, and I have proof now. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Melanie, and today we are recapping all of April, which I read, I think, 7 books and 1 graphic novel, which is the most I've read, I think, this year so far. Let me double check. Yes, the most I've read this year, and it is officially May now, but month 4, not too bad. I felt very accomplished this month, and this is kind of like my TBR for this month was very like opposite ends of the spectrum. We had monsters basically and some horror, and then we had like cute spring reads and like romantasy. So it was a wild ride, but I had a blast. Starting with the first book I finished, which was a book I was in the middle of, and it was for my IRL book club, and that is The Unmaking of June Farrow by Adrienne Young. This one I enjoyed. This is my second Adrienne Young book. The other book I read was Sky in the Deep, which is very different. It's like a Viking historical fiction romance kind of thing. This one, the writing was very beautiful. I overall enjoyed it. I don't think it's for me though. The romance was nice, and it was a lot more romance heavy than I thought, even though I kind of knew there was romance going in. But I think my main issue with this book is I think it easily could have been 100 pages shorter. It just took so long to like get to the meat of it, and it just didn't really build enough tension for like the mystery aspect of the story. And so in this book we follow June, who her family, the women in her family, are historically known for going insane. And so she lives with her grandma and learns about kind of the family mystery of like why they go insane, because there's kind of a reason behind it. But things take a turn when she starts kind of seeing things, getting hallucinations of people she doesn't know, and then starts seeing a random door. And so one day she decides to go through that door, and then we find out what's going on after a while. But it is a really nice kind of like southern romance, I would say. The vibes are immaculate, very perfect for spring. I think it's set in a fake town kind of near Asheville. I think it's a fake town, but yeah, you get like a lot of the southern vibes. Like there's a fair. It's really nice, and her family is like flower farmers, so you know, you get a lot of flower vibes. So overall, I really liked this book. I just don't think it was like for me. I think I said that already, but my other friends really enjoyed it. I think one who's more of a romance person liked it the most, but it was nice to like read for a book club. And like the mystery aspect, like I said, I wanted there to be a little more tension, but it was really well done in like the unraveling of it. I liked that aspect. I think it just took so long to get there because it wasn't really like shocking. Nothing was shocking. I kind of expected everything that happened except for like one of the things, so that was nice. But I ended up giving this book 3.5 stars. I think a lot of the mechanics of like what's going on when it's explained is, you know, not super realistic or just doesn't really make sense. We were kind of in our book club session, we were kind of just like, how does that actually work? Like, that doesn't really make sense. Like, what is it? But, you know, you kind of have to suspend your disbelief a little bit. You know, it's not supposed to be like a high fantasy or like sci-fi book. So there's just kind of like magical realism elements. So keep that in mind. It's not like super fantasy. So yeah, great start to April. The second springy cozy book I read is Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones. This one I have been meaning to read for a long time. I think it's been on my TBR before, and I finally got to it. I'm very proud of myself. though. I did read most of this by audiobook just because it was easier to follow. It does read slightly more middle grade, but not like too much. It's still fun enough for adults and not too like dumbed down, I guess I would say. We then did watch the movie again after, and they're very different. Reading this book, a lot of the things the movie like adds is just not in there, but it's still a really good read. Howl is definitely more of like a lover boy in this. It's a lot about like his search for love, which in the movie not necessarily. Like the whole war aspect in the movie, and also him turning into a bird, I guess I would say, is not in this book, so don't expect that if you're looking to read. It's, I would say, like less fantastical elements, but also still very much fantasy. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought the characters were really, really well done, and I got like kind of a different side of the story, which I thought was really nice. It did get slow a little times, but you know, that kind of happens sometimes, so it wasn't like that dragging though. So I did end up giving this 4 stars. The next book I read was the first monster book of the month, and so it's not technically a monster, but she even calls herself a monster, so that is Victorian Psycho by Virginia Farrow. This book is about a governess who has a knack for the macabre and thinks really awful thoughts about what she wants to do with the people she's around. She joins a new family to become a governess to their 2 kids. You know, they're a very rich upper class family, like very typical of the Victorian age. And so she starts to have these inclinations, and it's very, you know, American Psycho in Victorian era. So you can imagine what happens. It is very gory, very bloody. Some things she does that I'm not entirely sure I really thought needed to be included, but she's a weirdo with weird thoughts of hurting people, and this is written in a very funny way. I really enjoyed the writing style. I'm curious to read something else by Virginia Farrow, and it wasn't like the best book. I was expecting it to be like a little better, but we kind of get her entire life story in this short book, and it does have a conclusion that I thought was really interesting, and so I had a really fun time with this one, and I think I gave it 4.5 stars. So it just didn't really hit the 5-star mark that I was hoping it would be, but I had a really great time, and it's short and sweet. And yeah, if you don't like gore, don't read this book, or blood or anything. So yeah, I would stay away from this. So, and if you do, and you are someone that needs to check trigger warnings, please do for this one, because there's some pretty rough things in here. So that's that. The next book I read was my graphic novel, and that is The Tea Dragon Society by Kay O'Neill. This one is super short, so I read it like between books, and it was a really cute book. I think there's 2 more books to this series, but I really liked the introduction. I think the artwork is beautiful. It was just very cozy and comforting. We follow a goblin girl who discovers a little tea dragon and tries to figure out where it came from, and then when she meets the owner, she gets embroiled in caring for tea dragons, and it's really cute. She meets some friends along the way, and you learn about these tea dragons and the backstories of all the people. So I can't wait to learn more. It's very cute, very like middle grade, young. It was in like the children's section, I believe, or middle grade. I'm not sure like exactly what section, but very cute, and the art is beautiful, so highly recommend. I don't really rate my graphic novels, so there's no rating for this. The next one was a huge surprise for me. I fell in love with this book, and I was not expecting to, because I've heard good things, but I've also heard not so great things. So it was very, very surprising to me, because it is a classic, and that is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, which is my second monster book of the month. This one, oh my god, her writing just really brought me in, and it was so not the story that I was expecting, like at all. Very different. and just so like dramatic. Like the way she wrote dialogue was so dramatic, and I loved it, and it was so enthralling, and how she talked about like the landscapes and everything that was going on with Victor Frankenstein, the structure of the story. Like we meet someone else completely, and then learn about Victor Frankenstein's story through him, and then the monster as well. And so very, very interesting structure, which, you know, I like an interesting structure, and storytelling strategy. I thought, yeah, I don't know, this was just so well done, and the writing was super accessible. I didn't have any issues like understanding what she was trying to say. And yeah, I really want to read more from Mary Shelley, which I think she has like one more book and then some short stories, so I'm going to try to read those. But I'm sad she doesn't have like a lot more, because yeah, this might be one of my new favorite books, and I want to read the 1818 text also. That is, I think, the unedited version. This is, I think, the 3rd edition version, which has been edited a lot. So I'm very curious what the other version is like, but I'll give myself some time before I actually pick that up, because, you know, I want to still digest this one. But wow, yeah, 5 stars for sure. New favorite, most likely. And ooh, I feel like I want everyone to read this, but I don't think everyone will experience it the same way as I did, and that's okay. But yeah, absolutely love this. The next book I read was a buddy read with Kat at Curious Cat, and that is The Phoenix Keeper by S.A. McLean. This book was good, not my favorite. I probably most likely would have DNF'd it if I wasn't buddy reading it, honestly, but I'm kind of glad I didn't, because I still was entertained and I still enjoyed the book. I just had a lot of issues with it. Like, I'm not a fan of how she like introduces like the appearance of her characters, but I think that's just a personal thing. But yeah, it was just kind of jarring to me. And then I really enjoyed learning about the magical creatures. I think that was the most interesting aspect, but the world building was really odd. Like it was very much like normal Earth, except for things were called different things. Like it was all like fantasy names and fantasy areas, but like everything was the exact same thing in terms of like cars, like normal food. Like they had, her parents owned a Mexican restaurant. It just wasn't called a Mexican restaurant, but they were literally eating like chips and salsa and tacos. And like she also said they had like, the sheep had sombreros like on the walls, which also felt like kind of weird for like supposedly like a non-Mexican Mexican restaurant. Like I've never been in a Mexican restaurant where there was like sheep wearing sombreros on the wall. It kind of feels a little weird. But I also had a lot of issues with the main character. She was interesting. She had some character development. I just don't think it was like enough to justify like how she acted. She has social anxiety, which I thought was pretty well depicted. But I think Kat said this as well, but it felt like she used her social anxiety as an excuse to be like rude to literally everyone except for her best friend and like the person she was interested in. And that to me is like never an excuse to be rude to people. And so it just didn't add up a little bit, like why she was so mean to people, even like customers to the zoo. So yeah, that was interesting. And then just it was frustrating like how she didn't see things coming, because it was very obvious what was going to happen. And then the whole ending, I just didn't make sense to me. Like for it being like a zoo like setting, you would think it would be more about like the animals, and like the book is about like a phoenix conservation, like trying to prevent them from going extinct and starting a breeding program at the zoo she's in, and she's the head phoenix keeper. And so like the goals for that didn't really match like how the book ended in like that major arc. So it was a bit interesting, not gonna lie, but I think the writing was fine. It was like mid, honestly. And so I ended up giving this 3 stars, which is probably generous, but I still like was entertained, and I did, I think, the majority of this by audiobook as well. The next book was also a huge surprise for me with how much I enjoyed it. This is also on the more like romantic-y, cozy side of the month. But I read The Rose Bargain by Sasha Payton Smith, and I loved this. This is like a YA romantasy, but probably more new adult leaning. I thought this was so fun, and this was the first like YA fantasy I've read in a really long time that I really enjoyed. And I thought like the pacing was just right, like the amount of like darkness added to it as well as lightness, like the character development I thought was really well done. The twists at the end I thought were really fun. And so yeah, I just had a blast, honestly, and I was not expecting that. This book is set in kind of an alternate England in the 1800s, where after I think King James was killed by like a fairy queen, and so she has been queen since then for centuries at this point, and she rules. And so every year when young girls come out to society, they are able to make a bargain with the fairy queen, and with this bargain they give up something in order to get something they want. So for example, to have a great memory, you can give up a finger. It's like, it's always kind of a darker, like more awful thing to give up, or like painful kind of gory thing, and I thought that was a nice twist. Made it a little edgier. And so this season though is slightly different, where the queen announces before the bargains are made that she is looking for a princess for her son, Prince Bram, who is a fairy prince. And so there will be a competition for whoever wants to sign up to fight for the hand of Prince Bram, who is a very nice, very amiable person, and everyone wants to be with him. And the queen is known to be like evil, basically. Not like super evil, but you know, not the best. But her son is supposed to be basically the opposite of that. And so the queen also has a stepson named Prince Emmett. And so Prince Emmett and Prince Bram are very close. And so Ivy, our main character, ends up in the running to wed Prince Bram, and Prince Emmett, for some reasons, tries to help her along the way. And so I'll stop there. I don't want to ruin it, but it gets pretty dark. The queen puts them through some pretty interesting things and like kind of trials. The relationships between the girls that are selected is very well done, I think, and it kind of had a wide breadth of types of relationships and types of people, and I really liked that. And you get a perspective from each of the girls, at least one chapter, so I liked that aspect. I don't want to spoil anything, so I'll stop there, but I had so much fun with this book, and hopefully I explained it well enough. But there's a lot that goes on, and I think the ending is definitely worth it. I think there's at least one more book coming out, so it's not completed, but yeah, highly recommend. I gave this one 5 stars. I don't know if it'll stay at a 5 stars, but as of now, enjoyment level, like, it's not the best thing I ever read, but it's not on the same level as Frankenstein, I will say, but like purely enjoyment level, 5 stars. Oh, and I forgot to say, this is very, very like Once Upon a Broken Heart, the selection, half a soul coded. Like, it was screaming Once Upon a Broken Heart to me, which I don't think I've ever experienced that before, even though that's not even one of the comp titles. I think The Cruel Prince and The Selection were the comp titles here, but this was like the first time in a long time that I was like excited to keep reading something in terms of like a romantasy, and I thought the romance aspect of it was really well done. So yes, 5 stars. And lastly, we have our final monster book, and that is Monstrilio by Gerardo Samano Cordova. This one was weird, and I was expecting it to be weird. I would consider this more literary horror than like pure horror. I think towards the end it definitely gets more horror, but the majority of it is definitely more literary fiction-y. It got like pretty creepy and gross at the end, not gonna lie, so like beware of that. But I thought the character dynamics and the writing and just the evolution of Monstrilio, as well as the parents and the friends and the family members surrounding them, just how they evolved throughout the story was really interesting to me. So long story short, this book is about a young boy who dies, and his mom takes a piece of his lung and saves it in a jar and ends up feeding it, and it turns into a little Monstrilio monster thing. We go from there, and I don't really want to ruin anything, so I'm not going to say more, but I thought this was really well written. I'm very curious to see something else that he's written. I think this might be his first piece. Yeah, Monstrilio is his first novel, so I'm very curious what else he comes up with. This is set in Mexico City as well as New York and Germany, so it's kind of a wild ride, honestly, around the world. But very interesting, like, horror piece and kind of character-driven book for sure. So yeah, highly recommend this. I gave 4.5 stars. And so that wraps up my April reading month. I hope you liked the kind of mix of monsters and magical creatures and romance and, you know, cozy vibes. It was definitely an interesting time to go between the two genres or kind of styles. That was not as jarring as you would think it was. It was kind of nice to have like both, because, you know, I love my dark books, but I also like my cozy kind of fluffy books. So yeah, it was a really great reading month for me, honestly, and I'm really proud of myself for finishing my entire TBR, especially when I was so busy that month. But I guess I did have slightly more time to read because I took time off for like my wisdom teeth and other things. So let me know in the comments if you read any of these or if you're interested in reading any of these, because overall, really solid month. I really enjoyed the majority of the books. I would say like none of them were awful, so that's good at least. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great day. Bye.